Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astottarasata Sri Srimad A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki ISKCON's founder Charya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Astottarasata Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 11, Swayambhuva Manu advises Dhruva Maharaj, text 7. Manu Vacha Alam Vatsa Atiroshena Tamadvarena Papmana Yena Punya Janan Etan Avadhi Tam Anagasa Manuruvacha Alam Vatsa Tiroshena Alam Vatsa Tiroshena Tamodvarena Papmana Tamodvarena Papmana Yena Punya Janan Etan Yena Punya Janan Etan Avadhishtam Anagasam Avadhishtam Anagasa Manuruvacha Alang Vatsati Roshena Tamadvarena Papmana Yena Punya Janan Etan Avadhishtam Anagasa Manuruvacha Alang Vatsati Roshena Tamodvarena Papmana Yena Punya Janan Etan Avadishtam Anagasa. Alam Vatsati Roshena Tamodvarena Papmana Yena Punya Janan Etan Avadishtam Anagasa Manuruvacha Alam Vatsati Roshena Tamodvarena Papmana Yena Punya Janan Etan Avadishtam Anagasa. Uvacha. Manu said, Alam, enough, Vatsa, my dear boy. Atiroshena, with excessive anger. Tamadvarena, the path of ignorance. Papmana, sinful. Yena, by which. Punya Janan, the Yakshas. Etan, all these. Avadhi, you have killed. Tvam, you. Anagasa, offenseless. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Manu said, my dear son, please stop. It is not good to become unnecessarily angry. It is the path to hellish life. Now you are going beyond the limit by killing yakshas who are actually not offenders. Prabhupada's purport. In this verse, the word atiroshena means with unnecessary anger. When Dhruva Maharaj went beyond the limits of necessary anger, his grandfather Swayambhuva Manu immediately came to protect him from further sinful action. From this we can understand that killing is not bad, but when killing is done unnecessarily, or when an offenseless person is killed, such killing opens the path to hell. Dhruva Maharaj was saved from such a sinful action because he was a great devotee. A Kshatriya is allowed to kill only for maintenance of the law and order of the state. He is not allowed to kill or commit violence without reason. Violence is certainly a path leading to a hellish condition of life, but it is also required for maintenance of the law and order of the state. Here, Lord Manu prohibited Dhruva Maharaj from killing the yakshas because only one of them was punishable for killing his brother Uttama. Not all of the yaksha citizens were punishable. We find in modern warfare, however, that attacks are made upon innocent citizens who are without fault. According to the law of Manu, such warfare is a most sinful activity. Furthermore, at the present moment, civilized nations are unnecessarily maintaining many slaughterhouses for killing innocent animals. When a nation is attacked by its enemies, the wholesale slaughter of the citizens should be taken as a reaction to their own sinful activities. This is nature's law. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmei Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vancha Kalpatarubhyas Chakripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Manur Uvacha, Alam Vatsatiroshena, Tamodvarena Papmana, Yena Punya Janan Etan, Avadishtam Anagasaha. Lord Manu said, my dear son, please stop. It is not good to become unnecessarily angry. It is the path to hellish life. Now you are going beyond the limit by killing yakshas who are actually not offenders. At this point, Dhruva Maharaj is engaged in quite a vicious battle with a very powerful enemy based in the city of the Yakshas, Alakapuri. And as we read before, quite an amazing battle was ensuing. Of course, earlier we read how in a very, very brief description, how one very powerful Yaksha had killed his brother Uttama when Uttama was out hunting. And in reaction to that, Dhruva became beside himself with lamentation, and that was followed then by a need for vengeance, a need for revenge. And so then he began to battle with the Yakshas. And although the description is not very detailed, but there is just one Yaksha that was responsible. It wasn't that the entire race of the Yakshas had declared war on his brother Uttama, and therefore the entire race of Yakshas had to be killed. But Dhruva Maharaj was so beside himself in anger that he could not control himself. Even though he's such a great devotee, a pure devotee, we just read for chapters before that his exchanges with the Lord and how the Lord granted him a position, a planet, Dhruva Loka, the pole star. Such amazing benediction, such an amazing, unparalleled position he attained by his bhakti. But still he had this momentary, a long momentary lapse of anger. And one may consider, how is that possible? Shouldn't he have been completely aloof, understanding very clearly the basics of spiritual understanding, that we're not the body, Uttama is not the body, he's spirit soul, he's never really killed, and thereby using that knowledge and also understanding the dangers of anger and things like that. Shouldn't he have been in better control of himself? So it's described that one cannot fully understand, sometimes even remotely understand, the mind and activities of a great devotee. It's very, very difficult. We find even in the case of Arjuna, just a few days before his son was killed, Abhimanyu was ruthlessly killed on the battle of Kurukshetra. What did Arjuna experience with Krishna? He heard the Bhagavad Gita from the supreme teacher, Krishna. And he was fully convinced about the nature of the body, the nature of the soul, how temporary these relationships are in this world, and he had to do his duty to fight. But as soon as he had heard how Abhimanyu was killed, and that his son was killed rather, how did Arjuna react? He seemed like a normal person, attached father, lamenting like anything, rolling on the ground, pulling out his clothing. Sometimes you go to funerals and you see these professional criers. Have you ever seen professional criers? It's a thing. It's actually a thing. People are invited to add to the whole experience, beating their chests and crying and the hair. It adds to the whole, anyway. So one could have thought, hey, Arjuna is pretty good at this. He played that lamenting, devastated father really well. And Prabhupada was asked this question, is the reaction, is the behavior of Arjuna that of a person who has heard the Bhagavad Gita? Quite an interesting question, quite an intelligent question. And Prabhupada said, that is okay, but that is natural. To lament in that way for the loss of a loved one is natural. If a person didn't lament, then one would wonder, where's the softness of the heart that one doesn't react like that? But Prabhupada said that is natural for a father who loves his son to react in that way. Doesn't mean that becoming a great devotee, a pure devotee, one doesn't have emotions. Rather, how one applies those emotions in service to Krishna is the real test. And Prabhupada said, so what did Arjuna do next? Did he just forget himself, become so self-indulgent and just left everything? Some people get so overwhelmed with grief that they'll kill themselves. But what did Arjuna do? No. The next morning, he got up and he followed Krishna's order. He fought. That is the person who has read Bhagavad Gita, who has heard Bhagavad Gita. Not that he doesn't lament, he doesn't show emotions, but he steps up, and when necessary, he follows his sadhana, he follows his practice, no matter what the situation is. So Dhruva, yes, one could accuse him of being such an attached brother, and one could wonder, how attached could he have been? Here was Uttama, who was in one sense the source of his initial frustration and anger, because only Uttama was allowed to sit on Uttanapad's lap and not Dhruva, right? But here he is displaying so much of affection and attachment, even to the extent of killing all the yakshas. So we have to understand, Dhruva is a great devotee. And when one has that position of a great devotee, a soul surrendered unto Krishna completely, acting for the pleasure of Krishna, then sometimes there may be an aberration, some glitch, so to speak, in the person's behavior. One shouldn't pay too much of attention to that. One shouldn't. Rather, one should also see the volumes of positive service that one has performed. And we'll find, Prabhupada says, Dhruva Maharaj was saved from such sinful action because he was a great devotee. Because he was a great devotee. He was saved. Now, of course, in the modern day, we don't like to tolerate preferential treatment of any way, of any kind. As in, preferential treatment is like, not acceptable. Everybody is equal. Yes, on the level of the soul, everyone is equal. On the level of the soul, there is equality. But our process, or in this case, Manu is appearing, the law of Manu, Manu Samhita, is not just a one-size-fits-all, type of application of the principle or the laws of Manu. It's a personal application. Yes, the one-size-fits-all laws and rules and regulations, they give structure and order, they give security and confidence in society, but still the application of the law sometimes needs consideration of extenuating circumstances, needs deeper personal consideration of the person's character, the future of the person, which great sages can see, which we can't see. So Dhruva, he has a track record. Yes, this was a weird situation that happened. He got overcome by anger, was killing, but he was reined in, and when given good instruction, he understood. He understood. So application of law, according to the Vedic culture, has to be done in a personal way. Of course, you try and bring that reasoning in today's society, you'll be scoffed at and banished. Because they call it preferential treatment. They call it, this type of preferential treatment, it's not transparent, it's a cover-up. This person has done something and you're not dealing with them in the way everyone else should be dealt. And that's there. So today's society is governed by principles that are not Krishna-centered. They do not take what is most pleasing, what is desired by Krishna into account. Rather, it's based on the temporary relations we have, the current day or the mood of the day understanding of morality, which at least in my few years on this planet, I've seen adjusted and changed in so many ways. And if you read in history over the last many hundreds of years, the understanding of morality, the principles of law, the application of punishment and mercy have been adjusted so much. So much. I was just thinking about the medieval times right now, when some unfortunate lady in Europe was deemed or accused to be a witch. Oh my word. The church would have an amazing way of figuring out whether the person is a witch or not. You know what was the way? So anyone who's accused of being a witch, they had to sit on a scale. There's a few tests. So they had to sit on a scale, and on the other side of the scale was the Bible. And if they weighed heavier than the Bible, they were a witch. And what would happen? They would either be burned at the stake or drowned with weights. So things like that happened. And the people in charge really felt that this was their application, their sincere application of morality. They really believe, I think they really believed it. Likewise, now he's like, he can't take it. He can't take it. It's so ridiculous. Rukmini is like, what? So you'll find it's so ridiculous just 500 years ago. And then what's even more ridiculous is not just the application, or in today's society, not just the weird application of punishment, is the amazing, complete other extreme application of mercy shown by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. People can't accept that. Jagai and Madai, come off it. Who on earth does Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda think they are, that they can award mercy to Jagai and Madai? Come off it. That doesn't conform to basic understanding, basic civilization. What they did, they would have had multiple life sentences in today's South African type of law. What to speak of capital punishment in some other countries, like India or something. But Lord Chaitanya. So the application of mercy, the application of punishment, cannot just be seen on a blank slate of, everyone's equal. And this pastime shows that. Even the application of law and impending danger by someone, or mercy shown to someone that could be very dangerous in the future, we can talk about Duryodhana when he was born. If you read Mahabharata, you read about when Duryodhana was about to be born, there was all these inauspicious omens. It was donkeys were braying. If you hear donkeys braying at the birth of a child, of course donkeys are braying everywhere, but human donkeys too. But, Dhritarashtra was advised again and again, get rid of this child. Get rid of this child. He's a huge threat to the world order. He is empowered by Kali, even, He's so but Dhritarashtra applied mercy and said, no, based on this is my eldest son, how can I do this? And look what Duryodhana did for so many years after that. Caused so much of chaos and pain to Krishna and Krishna's devotees. So one may think, but there's a child. That's a child. How can you get rid of a child? According to our understanding of morality. What were the direct reasons that Duryodhana presented that he was a threat? There wasn't anything except the wisdom and the foresight of the great sages. So the application of law, the application of punishment, the application of mercy requires trust and faith in higher transcendental intelligence. Requires deep faith in Krishna. And even then, we find when we try to place faith sometimes, we may think, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Why is that person getting away with this situation? And why is that person not getting away with this? I did something so simple and innocent, but I'm getting so much of reaction from Krishna or from the law or from even in a spiritual environment, from my spiritual authorities. Guru Maharaj chastised me so much for the simple thing, and yet this other person did the same thing, and Guru Maharaj smiled at them, no problem. Huh? How are we to understand and tolerate that? We cannot accept that. Guru Maharaj needs to be brought to book. He needs to be equal. Samoham. Krishna is samoham sarva bhute. He's equal, he's impartial. Guru also has to be. No, Guru doesn't have to be. Guru is not there to act as Krishna does. He acts as the representative of Krishna, to apply his or her discrimination to bring each and every living entity closer to Krishna. So yes, so while one-size-fits-all application of the laws of mankind, or whatever laws are there based on punishment and mercy and justice, it has to be applied personally. What is the best path for this individual person to bring them closer to Krishna? And not overlooking the trauma it causes to others, because that also has to be taken into account. So when one finds oneself in a position or in a service or in a role like Swayambhuva Manu, or the head of state, or whatever, the judge in the court, or some even spiritual authority, one has to be very, very dependent on Krishna and the direction of Krishna and Krishna's representatives. One has to always have at the forefront of one's mind what is the best for the persons or the persons involved in relation to bringing everyone closer to Krishna. In relation to that. This is important. This is very, very important. Here Prabhupada, he speaks about the need for violence, necessary violence. Because we're born in a world, we exist in a world where violence is second nature. It's happening everywhere, all around us. Even we ourselves, by speaking and breathing and walking, we are violent, right? Trampling and living entities, breathing in living entities. Even the food that we eat, we pull out vegetables from the ground, and that kills the plant. Harvesting crops, wheat and so on, it kills the plant, rice plants and so on. So there's violence involved. But here, ati, what is the word? Ati roshena. Unnecessary anger, unnecessary violence. We must not give way to that. Arjuna was spoken Bhagavad Gita. Why? Why was Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna? Prabhupada said, to make him angry. You can't go smiling in, offering obeisances to the enemy and kill him. You have to build up this energy, this emotion, and then only you can fight. Hanuman used anger in the most amazing way to serve Sita and Ram. So anger is necessary, but it has to be conditioned. It has to be influenced by Krishna's service. Otherwise, anger, as Prabhupada says, Swayambhuva Manu says, it is the path to hellish life. It is the path to hellish life. That is what will definitely happen. We find even Prabhupada, he displayed anger. I remember one of these Prabhupada memorial festivals of His Holiness Bhakti Charaswami many years ago was here. Radhanath temple. And we were fortunate then, Maharaj was here, His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami was here, His Holiness Lokanath Swami was here, maybe one other senior devotee, I can't remember. And all three of them, at least those three, had extensive association with Prabhupada. And, one of them, I think Jayadvaita Maharaj, was asked by the other, what was your recollection or your emotional recollection of Prabhupada? What would you describe in one word? And Jayadvaita Maharaj said, scary. Scary. And Maharaj said, everybody has this feeling, Prabhupada, so sweet, so gentle, so kind. But for me, it was scary. Because Prabhupada could get angry. And Bhakti Charan Maharaj recounts that famous story of the orange juice story. You know the orange juice story? Kadambakananda Swami does his purport on the orange juice story. That Prabhupada was devastatingly angry at His Holiness Bhakti Charan Maharaj for not bringing the orange juice in time. And then Prabhupada was just shouting, and the room seemed to have been shaking with that extensive anger. Now, devotees, if Guru Maharaj had to call you in and devastate you like that, would you still be walking like His Holiness Bhakti Charan Swami, giving the orange juice to Guru Maharaj? You'll drop it right there and hightail it out of there, come back 2 weeks later. After taking a break, I've had enough, no one loves me, this and that, right? It'll be traumatic. It'll be traumatic. But Bhakti Charan Maharaj went and left and begged Prabhupada to please take this. And Prabhupada was still shaking as Maharaj left the juice there. So one understanding is that Prabhupada, even though he was so angry, it was fine for the devotees because they understood that Prabhupada captured them with his love. So no matter how we reacted, they understood. They were interested in the love. And sometimes that love was manifest in the correction, in the shouting. I've had doors slammed in my face by the spiritual master, but I never at one point ever thought that it wasn't anything but care and affection. And His Holiness Kadamba Maharaj gives another purport to that orange juice story, that not only did Prabhupada capture his disciples by his genuine love, but His Holiness Bhakti Charan Maharaj captured Prabhupada with his love. So that's also very nice. So we need to do mutual capturing. So Prabhupada could get very angry, very, very, very angry. Just like once in 1971 at this huge Pandal program that the devotees organized for Prabhupada in Connaught Circus, like very prestigious part of Delhi, and thousands of people were coming daily, 20,000-30,000 people sometimes. And on one of the evenings, Prabhupada is speaking, and then one Western young hippie raised his hand and asked I can't remember the question, something. And Prabhupada, some exchange, and Prabhupada invited him onto the stage. And he was like kind of wildish looking, the wild hippie look, unkempt. And the devotees were thinking, what's going on here? Why is Prabhupada doing this? Sat him down, gave him a cushion, and what else he gave him? A microphone. And they started discussing Prabhupada and this hippie. And then this hippie turned the discussion and said, you are saying Bhagavad Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago, but I've read elsewhere that it was spoken 1,500 years ago. Can you explain? Prabhupada said, no, you answer my question first. And that man said, no, you answer mine. And then a whole argument. 30,000 people in the audience seeing this argument happen. And now it wasn't just Prabhupada, you could see, was like physically moving in anger. And that man was also, this young man was just unabated. And eventually they had to escort that man away. And there was such a shock and disbelief in all the thousands of people. Even the disciples were wondering, what is going on here? Prabhupada got so angry at something that was, why did we have to allow that situation to escalate? But Prabhupada got angry. So the devotees, most of them just couldn't figure out what happened. Of course, most of them, if not all of them, even though they couldn't figure out, they had full faith in Prabhupada. So nothing happened to them. They weren't this. But many of the people started getting up and leaving. They were saying things like, why is Swamiji getting angry? He should have been more in control. This was bad. And many people left. I heard one account that Malati Mataji was with some ladies, from the audience, and one lady just started sort of criticizing that Prabhupada got angry. How could your Guru Maharaj get angry? This is very bad. Malati turned around and slapped her. Slapped her. Like, how can you say that about Prabhupada, I mean, for me, that when I heard that perspective, I thought, wow, I wish I could have that intense devotion to Prabhupada and my Guru Maharaj. And Giriraj Maharaj gives, his understanding of that situation. Why did Prabhupada? Because Prabhupada was making a point. Because, Prabhupada was asking him the question, after he had challenged, you saying 5,000 years, but I heard 1,000. Prabhupada said, what is the process of receiving the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita? And that man was insisting on his question. Prabhupada said, no, I am not your servant. You answer my question. And it went back and forth. So this was the point. Why did Prabhupada get angry? Because he wanted to establish the principle of what is the process to accept knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita. One must come with a humble, submissive mood to the authority. One cannot demand from the authority. So he got angry. But only those with higher intelligence and faith and trust and devotion will be able to see that and understand that. Can appreciate that. A lesser person, like so many of the persons in the audience, couldn't understand. They got very upset and they left. So one cannot understand the mind and activities of the great saintly persons like that. Also here Prabhupada says that when a nation is attacked by its enemies, the wholesale slaughter of the citizens should be taken as a reaction to their own sinful activities. That is nature's laws. Why? Because they are maintaining so many slaughterhouses. You all may remember this devotee Akhanda Kirtan Prabhu. He once told me a very interesting realization he had about 92, 93, around that time. There was a lot of violence, political violence that was happening in the country between like different political groups, right? And one of the sort of central places where most of the violence was taking place, he said, was in Hammersdale. It's kind of like on the way to Pietermaritzburg, past, if you drive, you'll see these signs, Hammersdale. And he gave his purport why there was so much of violence, whereas other places there wasn't so much of violence as compared to there. And he said because there the main employment of all the people who lived there was in the few abattoirs that were around there. And he said his understanding was all these people were filled with so much of anger out of that violence that it became such a situation. So when there's slaughterhouses, when the whole economy, when the whole civilization is based on slaughter of innocent animals, people will get individual karma being meted out to them, but there's also societal karma, there's national karma, there's global karma that comes. So when we see in warfare, when apparently innocent citizens are just slaughtered, then Prabhupada is saying here, it should be taken as a reaction to their own sinful activities. Collective karma is happening. That happens. So in the case of the yakshas, there was something that was due to them, right? And it got meted out in this way. Of course, that doesn't mean Dhruva Maharaj must think now that I am the carrier of their karma. You get people who sometimes think like that. I can murder you. I'm just simply giving you what is due to you. No. But still, they also had to go through something. There was some reason. And how and why, we can never understand. The law of karma is so intricate and exacting, nature's law. We won't understand. And if we do understand from the perception of how we are conditioned by today's society, we will remain lost and confused, and we will reject the Vedic understanding, the Vedic civilization. So one has to have trust and faith in the superior intelligence, like in this case Dhruva Maharaj had the sense to be reined in by his grandfather Swayambhuva Manu. Also we find Krishna, he gets angry. We heard stories about Krishna getting angry. You think he's looking at his uncle with great love and affection there? I mean, he's angry like anything, because at the harm and the torture he put his great devotees through. What about, do we have the picture of, we do? No, we don't. Oh yes, we do. Bhishma Dev. You think Krishna is smiling at Bhishma Dev? No, he is running to him in anger. And look at what Krishna is prepared to give up, that picture. He gave his word that he wouldn't take up arms. He won't take a side. He'll be truthful. He didn't care for any of those titles and reputations. Krishna doesn't care for. The only reputation Krishna wants to care for or is concerned about is the reputation of him being Bhakta Vatsala. That's the only everything else is incidental. He'll give up everything. But Bhakta Vatsala, care, affection and protection for his devotees is the main identity that Krishna wants to uphold. He'll do away with anything else. It doesn't matter to him. But to show love and protection, that's one thing that Krishna holds on to for dear life. Okay, we'll stop here. Are there any questions or comments anybody would like? Okay.
Hare Krishna. Swarup Prabhu, I appreciated the point you made about modern day understandings versus compared to philosophical concepts in the Shastra, like the point about the word is escaping me now. Preferential treatment and then personalized punishment. I was thinking it becomes difficult. We can see that in a spiritual context, preferential treatment can exist. And so then both the concepts is possible, and if we if we sort of delete one option, then we end up blindly following. But then we also need to have the conscious discernment to see both.
Yeah.
So then in that situation, is it then wise to understand concepts that come from material sources?
Oh yeah. No, we should balance that out, correct. There is, we cannot deny what our senses see and our mind and intelligence perceive. We cannot deny it. We'd be foolish to deny that. So some things are clear, but still, we must always have the understanding that my intelligence, my perception, there's always the chance, because we are conditioned, we have the 4 defects, the ability to make mistakes, imperfect senses, that there is a tendency. And when higher intelligence is presented, even though we may not have the sense to appreciate the higher intelligence at that time, at least we know the person who is bringing that higher intelligence, I have faith and trust in that person. We should show deference, definitely show deference. But one mustn't just be blind, definitely. No, I agree, one mustn't be blind. One must, by one's experience and direct perception, and even subtle perception, bring it and test it with higher authorities. Because boy, if one was just shelving one's direct perception, that's a recipe for disaster. To be exploited, and it's a recipe for disaster. Prabhupada wouldn't want us to do that. All right, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.